Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Frank, I'm already 90 years old, and how time flies, doesn't it? My intention today is to talk with you and share some wisdom I've learned along my journey, so that perhaps I can make yours lighter and you can enjoy every moment of it. The clarity that comes with age. Ah, my young friend, let me tell you about this wonderful clarity that age brings us. You know, when I was your age, I lived in an endless rush. I woke up early, took the crowded bus to work, spent hours in the office, all to earn more, buy more, be more. I thought success was in having the car of the year or the prettiest house in the neighborhood. I remember one day about 40 years ago when I was promoted to manager. I thought I had reached the peak of my life. I worked even more, came home late at night, barely saw my children grow up. I thought I was doing the right thing, building a better future for my family. But you know what? As the years went by, I began to realize that all that rush wasn't so important after all. One day I was sitting in the backyard, listening to the birds singing, when my grandson came running to show me a drawing he had made. At that moment, I felt such a great, pure joy that I realized it was these moments that really mattered. Today, with my white hair and a few more wrinkles, I see things more clearly. I understand that true success isn't in what we have, but in who we become and the relationships we build. The overtime at work seems so meaningless now, compared to the stories I could have told my children before bed. Age teaches us to value what is truly precious: the embrace of a loved one, a sincere conversation with a friend, the peace of mind that comes when we are in harmony with ourselves. It's as if life gives us special glasses, you know. Glasses that allow us to see beyond appearances, beyond the material. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we should neglect our responsibilities. What I'm saying is that over time, we learn to balance things better. We work, yes, but we don't forget to live. We seek success, but not at the cost of our happiness and relationships. This clarity, my young friend, is one of the greatest gifts that age brings us. It's as if the mists of anxiety and hurry dissipate, revealing what really matters. And believe me, when you get here, you'll understand that life is much richer and more meaningful when lived with this understanding. So, enjoy your journey, but don't forget to stop once in a while to appreciate the little things. They are what, in the end, will make all the difference. The irony of wealth and health. Ah, my dear, let me tell you about one of life's greatest ironies that we only really understand when we reach my age. It's that old story of wealth and health, you know. When I was young, around my 30s, I was determined to build an empire. I worked day and night, weekends, holidays. My motto was, sleep is for the weak. I drank coffee like it was water and fed on quick sandwiches at the office. Exercise. Who had time for that? I was too busy making money. I remember a colleague of mine, John. He always invited me to play soccer on Sundays or for a walk in the park. I laughed and said, "John, while you're running after a ball, I'm running after success." The years went by and there I was at 50 at the peak of my career. I had a big house, 2 cars in the garage, a well-stocked bank account. But you know what else I had? High blood pressure, sky-high cholesterol, and a nice stomach ulcer. That's when life played a trick on me. One day I was closing a big deal. The next I was in a hospital bed after a heart scare. The doctor looked at me and said, "Sir, you need to change your life, or there won't be a life to change." And wasn't he right? Suddenly, all that money I had accumulated was being spent on medicines, exams, and treatments. Ironically, I was using the wealth I had sought so much to try to recover the health I had neglected. Today, at 75, I understand this irony well. I see young people doing the same thing I did, sacrificing nights of sleep, relationships, and health in the name of financial success. I wish I could tell each of them, hey, health is your true wealth. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we shouldn't work hard or seek financial stability. What I'm saying is that we need to find a balance. What's the point of having millions in the bank if you don't have the health to enjoy it? I learned perhaps too late that investing in healthy habits is as important as investing in stocks. A daily walk, a balanced diet, moments of leisure and rest. These things don't cost much, but the return is priceless. You know, John, that colleague of mine who used to invite me to play ball. Today he's 73, plays soccer with his grandchildren, and travels the world with his wife. Me? Well, I'm better than I was, but I still struggle with the consequences of my past choices. So, my young friend, if there's one lesson I'd like to pass on, it's this. Take care of your health as if it were your most precious asset, because in the end, That's exactly what it is. True wealth is in being able to live a full and healthy life, enjoying the fruits of your work with vigor and joy. Remember, you can always earn more money, but you can't buy more health or time. Use both wisely. Well-being beyond materiality. My dear, let me tell you about one of the most valuable lessons I've learned over my 80 years of life. True well-being goes far beyond the material things we can buy or possess. I remember it as if it were yesterday. It was 1975. I had just bought my first brand new car, a shiny blue Volkswagen Beetle. I thought I had reached the top of the world. I spent weeks showing off that car to everyone I knew, convinced that that acquisition would bring me lasting happiness. But you know what? After a few weeks, that initial excitement started to fade. The new car became just a car. I started noticing other people with newer, more expensive cars, and there I was again, wanting something more. It was only many years later that I began to understand what really matters. I remember one day, already retired, when I was sitting on the porch with my wife, Mary. We were silent, just enjoying the sunset. At that moment, I felt a peace and happiness that no material possession had ever given me. I realized that true well-being isn't in the things we have, but in the experiences we live, the relationships we cultivate, and the inner peace we find. You see, I'm not saying material things have no value. Of course, having a roof over our heads and food on the table is essential, but beyond that, what really fulfills us? For me, I discovered that it's things like deep relationships, the love of my family, conversations with old friends, the affection of my grandchildren. These connections are what really warm my heart. Purpose, finding something that gives meaning to my days. After I retired, I started doing volunteer work at the local library. Helping others gives me a satisfaction that no salary could buy. Personal growth, continuing to learn and challenge myself. I started painting at 70. I'm no Picasso, but the joy of creating something with my own hands is unparalleled. Connection with nature, spending time outdoors, taking care of my small garden. There's something deeply comforting in feeling the earth in your hands and seeing plants grow. Mindfulness, learning to be present in the moment. Whether meditating, praying, or simply paying attention to my breathing, this practice helps me find peace amid the chaos of the world. I remember a conversation I had with my teenage grandson. He was frustrated because his parents wouldn't buy him the latest smartphone model. I sat down with him and shared some of these ideas. I talked about how in my youth I also thought happiness was in the things I could buy. But you know what, grandson? I said. The best thing I have today costs nothing. It's being able to sit here and talk with you, see the incredible man you're becoming. That's worth more than any gadget. I saw in his eyes that something made sense. Maybe he didn't fully understand at that moment. I didn't understand when I was young either. But I planted a seed, and that's what I want to leave with you, my young friend. True well-being, the true wealth of life, is in the things that no money can buy. It's in the smiles, the hugs, the shared experiences, personal growth, and inner peace. So as you follow your journey, remember, seek balance. Work for material comfort, yes, but don't forget to invest in what really matters. Cultivate relationships, seek purpose, grow as a person. That's where true well-being resides, far beyond materiality. Happiness is in simplicity. My young friend, let me tell you about one of the greatest discoveries of my long life. True happiness resides in the simplest things. When I was young, in my early 20s, I thought happiness was tied to great achievements and possessions. I dreamed of having a mansion, luxury cars, designer clothes. I spent hours admiring expensive store windows, imagining what my life would be like when I could buy all that. I remember one Christmas in the 60s when I could finally buy an expensive watch I had long wanted. I thought that object would bring me immense and lasting happiness. And yes, I was happy for a few days. Then that watch became just another object on my wrist. It was only with the passing of years that I began to realize where true happiness was hiding. It was in the simple moments, in the small pleasures of everyday life that often went unnoticed. One day, already in my 60s, I was sitting on a bench in the square near home. It was a common autumn day. The leaves were falling gently, forming a golden carpet on the ground. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange hues. I felt a gentle breeze on my face, and at that moment I was overcome by a feeling of peace and contentment so deep that I almost got emotional. There, In that simple instant, I felt truly happy. I then realized that happiness isn't in the things we have, but in our ability to appreciate what's around us. It's in the small moments, in the everyday experiences that we often ignore in our search for something bigger. Over the years, I discovered that my happiness came from things like a hot cup of coffee in the morning, enjoying the sunrise, the sound of my grandchildren's laughter playing in the backyard, a relaxed conversation with an old friend, the smell of wet earth after the rain, the satisfaction of finishing a good book, the comfort of wearing a pair of warm socks on a cold day. These things may seem trivial, but they are what give flavor to life. They are moments that cost nothing, but are worth everything. I remember once when my granddaughter, then 10 years old, came to visit me. She was sad because her parents couldn't take her to an expensive amusement park. So we decided to make our own amusement park in the backyard. We set up a tent with old sheets, made popcorn in the pan, told scary stories with a flashlight. At the end of the day, she told me, "Grandpa, this was the best day of my life." That touched me deeply. I realized we had created a precious memory with simple things we already had at home. Happiness was there in our creativity, in our connection, in the simplicity of the moment. Over time, I began to simplify my life. I donated things I didn't use, started valuing experiences instead of objects. I discovered that the less I had, the freer and happier I felt. I no longer needed to impress anyone with possessions. I could be myself, appreciating the little things. So, my young friend, if there's one piece of advice I can give you, it's this. Don't chase after big and expensive things so much. Learn to find joy in simple things. Cultivate gratitude for what you already have. Stop to feel the sun on your face, to hear the birds singing, to savor every bite of your meal. Happiness is there right before your eyes, in the simplest and most everyday things. We just need to learn to see it and appreciate it. And when you discover this, you'll see that life becomes much richer and more meaningful. Remember, true happiness isn't in having, but in being and appreciating. It's in simplicity, freedom in frugality. My young friend, let me tell you about one of the greatest lessons I've learned in my 85 years of life, the true freedom we find in frugality. When I was younger, around my 30s, I thought freedom meant being able to buy everything I wanted. I lived in debt, always wanting the latest model of everything. I remember buying a huge TV on installments, so expensive that it took me 2 years to pay off. At the time, I thought it was a sign of success. But you know what? That TV became an anchor. Every night I looked at it, and instead of feeling happy, I just thought about the installments I still had to pay. I was tied to an object that was supposed to bring me joy. It wasn't until after 50 that I began to understand what it really meant to be free. It happened when my wife, Mary, and I decided to make a big change in our lives. We sold our big house in the city and moved to a simple little house in the countryside. At first, it was a shock. We had less space, fewer things, but gradually I noticed something extraordinary. The less we had, the freer we felt. We no longer needed to work overtime to pay for things we didn't use. We no longer had the pressure to keep up appearances for the neighbors. Our life became simpler, yes, but infinitely richer in experiences and joys. We started practicing what I call intentional frugality. It's not about deprivation, but about making conscious choices about where to spend our money and energy. We discovered that cooking at home not only saved money, but became a moment of connection between us. Growing our own garden gave us fresh food and the satisfaction of seeing something grow. Exchanging material gifts for shared experiences strengthened our family bonds. Repairing and reusing objects instead of buying new ones gave us a sense of accomplishment. Living with less allowed us to work less and have more time for what really mattered. I remember one Christmas, a few years ago. Instead of exchanging expensive gifts, each family member prepared something special. My granddaughter made a photo album, my son prepared a delicious dinner, and I told stories about our family. It was the most meaningful Christmas we've ever had, and we spent almost nothing. This frugal approach gave us a freedom I never imagined possible. Freedom of time, of financial worries, of social expectations. We discovered that we didn't need much to be happy. One day, my neighbor, a young man always stressed about his debts, asked me how we managed to seem so calm. I explained to him our philosophy of frugal living. He was skeptical at first, But after a few months, he came to tell me that he had started applying some of these ideas and already felt lighter. You see, I'm not saying we should live like hermits or give up all comfort. Frugality isn't about deprivation. It's about making conscious choices. It's about understanding what really brings value to our lives and focusing on that. True freedom, my young friend, isn't in being able to buy everything, but in not needing much to be happy. It's in having time for what matters, in not being a slave to debts or possessions, in being able to make choices based on what we really want, not on what we think we should have. So if you want to experience a freedom that money can't buy, try living with less. Simplify your life. Focus on experiences, not possessions. Cultivate relationships, not material goods. Remember, true wealth isn't in what you have, but in what you don't need to have to be happy. And in this simplicity, in this intentional frugality, you can find a freedom you never imagined possible. The trap of consumerism. My dear young man, let me tell you about one of the most seductive and dangerous traps of our time, consumerism. It's a lesson I learned the hard way over my 87 years of life. When I was young, back in the 50s, the world was changing rapidly. Advertising was everywhere, promising that happiness could be bought in installments. I remember being hypnotized by store windows, wanting to have everything I saw. Once I saw an ad for an automatic washing machine. The commercial showed a smiling housewife, free from the heavy work of hand-washing clothes. I was convinced that machine would bring happiness to our family. We made a great effort, saved for months, and finally bought it. At first, I was ecstatic. I spent hours admiring that shiny machine in the laundry room, but you know what happened? After a few weeks, it became just a washing machine, and there I was, already wanting the next novelty that advertising presented to me. It wasn't until much later that I realized I was stuck in an endless cycle of desiring, buying, and soon wanting something new. It was like I was running on a treadmill, always moving but never getting anywhere. Consumerism is like that, a subtle trap. It promises us satisfaction, but delivers only momentary pleasure, followed by a void that only seems to be filled with more purchases. It's like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. Over time, I learned to recognize the signs of this trap. Constant dissatisfaction with what we already have. The belief that the next purchase will make us happy. Buying things we don't need with money we don't have. Feeling anxious or depressed when we can't buy something. Judging people by what they own, not who they are. I remember a conversation I had with my teenage grandson a few years ago. He was frustrated because his friends had newer smartphones than he did. I sat down with him and shared my own experience with consumerism. Look, I said, these companies are very clever. They make you believe you need the latest version of everything to be happy or accepted. But the truth is that real happiness comes from within, not from external objects. I saw a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. We decided to do an experiment together. For a month, before buying anything non-essential, we would ask ourselves, will this bring me lasting happiness or just momentary satisfaction? It was surprising how many purchases we avoided with this simple question. The antidote to consumerism, I discovered, is awareness. It's stopping and questioning our motivations for buying. It's learning to find satisfaction in experiences, relationships, and personal growth, not in material possessions. Some strategies that helped me escape this trap were practicing gratitude for what I already have, seeking experiences instead of things, cultivating hobbies and relationships that don't depend on spending, challenging myself to do more with less, disconnecting from media that promotes excessive consumerism. My young friend, I'm not saying we should never buy anything or that all consumption is bad. What I mean is that we should be conscious in our choices. We should question whether we really need something before buying it, and if that purchase aligns with our values and life goals. True wealth, I learned, is not in what we own, but in who we are and the experiences we live. Real freedom comes when we free ourselves from the constant need to have more. So the next time you feel the urge to buy something, stop for a moment, take a deep breath. Ask yourself if this will really add value to your life. You may discover that the most valuable thing you can give yourself is the freedom to not need it. Remember, life is much richer when lived, not when bought. Don't fall into the trap of consumerism. True happiness is waiting for you beyond the store windows. Finding joy in simple things. My dear young friend, today I want to share with you one of the most precious discoveries I've made in my 90 years of life, the deep joy we can find in the simplest things of everyday life. When I was younger, I always thought that happiness was in the big moments of life. Weddings, births, job promotions. I lived waiting for these events, as if only then could I really be happy. But you know what? I was letting many wonderful moments pass right under my nose. It wasn't until after I turned 60 that I began to notice the beauty and joy in the little things of everyday life. I remember one day in particular, I was sitting on the porch of my house. It was an ordinary spring day. Suddenly I noticed a hummingbird hovering near a flower. I sat there watching that little creature for a few minutes, marveling at its grace and beauty. At that moment, I felt such a pure and deep joy that I almost got emotional. That's when I realized true happiness is in the small moments, in the simple things that we often overlook in our daily rush. Since then, I started paying more attention to the small joys of everyday life. I discovered that there is so much beauty and satisfaction in things like the aroma of fresh coffee in the morning, the warmth of the sun on your face on a cold day, the sound of rain falling on the roof, the taste of a ripe fruit picked straight from the tree, the comfort of a sincere hug from a loved one. The feeling of satisfaction when finishing a difficult puzzle. Spontaneous laughter shared with a friend. I remember once when my granddaughter, then 8 years old, came to visit me. She was upset because her parents couldn't take her to an expensive amusement park that weekend. So I decided to show her how we could have fun without spending anything. We took some old cardboard boxes and built a castle in the backyard. We made paper crowns, used sheets as royal capes. We spent the whole afternoon playing, laughing, inventing stories. At the end of the day, she told me, "Grandpa, this was the best day of my life." That touched me deeply. I realized we had created a precious memory with simple things we already had at home. The joy was there in our creativity, in our connection, in the simplicity of the moment. Over time, I learned some strategies to better appreciate the simple things. Practice mindfulness, being really present in the moment. Using all senses to appreciate what's around you. Cultivate gratitude. Make a conscious effort to notice and be thankful for the small good things in each day. Slow down. Don't rush so much through life. Give yourself time to notice and appreciate the small pleasures. Simplify. Remove excess from our lives to be able to focus on what really matters. Reconnect with nature. Spend time outdoors, observing the beauty of the natural world. My young friend, life is made up of moments. Big moments, yes, but mostly small moments. It's these small moments that, added together, form the texture of our existence. When we learn to find joy in simple things, each day becomes an adventure, an opportunity to discover new pleasures. Don't wait for big events to be happy. Happiness is there, right before your eyes in the little things of everyday life. It's in the smile of a stranger on the street, in the smell of wet earth after the rain, in the feeling of a new book in your hands. Remember, life is not made only of extraordinary moments, but of ordinary moments lived in an extraordinary way. Learn to see the magic in the common, the beauty in the everyday. That's where you'll find an inexhaustible source of joy and satisfaction. So the next time you find yourself wishing for something grandiose or waiting for the next big event, stop for a moment. Look around you. Take a deep breath. There's so much beauty and joy in simple things, waiting to be discovered. You just need to open your eyes and your heart to them. Creating memories, not wealth. My dear ones, throughout this 92-year journey, I've learned that what really matters in the end is not the material wealth we accumulate, but the memories we create. I remember one summer, many years ago, when I decided to take my family on a simple camping trip. We didn't have much money at the time, but we had each other. We spent nights telling stories around the campfire, fishing in the creek and stargazing. Those memories, so simple and pure, are treasures I carry with me to this day. The secret, I discovered, is to invest in experiences and relationships, not things. It's the stories we share, the laughs we exchange, the moments of connection that truly enrich our lives. Gratitude as a tool for peace. As the years went by, I realized that gratitude is one of the most powerful tools we have for finding peace and contentment. I started practicing what I call a gratitude ritual. Every night before going to sleep, I spend a few minutes reflecting on 3 things I'm grateful for that day. Sometimes they're big things, like a loved one's recovery from an illness. Other times they're small things, like the taste of a cup of tea or the sound of a child's laughter. This practice transformed my perspective. Even on difficult days, there's always something to be grateful for, and that gratitude brings a deep peace, a contentment that no material wealth can buy. Purpose in later life. Finally, my dear ones, I want to talk about the importance of finding purpose, especially in later life. Many think that aging means losing purpose, but I discovered that it's quite the opposite. With age, we gain a unique perspective, a wisdom that only experience can bring. At 75, I started volunteering at a local school, telling stories to children. Seeing their eyes light up, sharing the lessons I've learned throughout life, gave me a new sense of purpose. Finding a purpose, whether through volunteering, a hobby, or simply being an attentive listener for younger people, brings deep satisfaction. It reminds us that we still have much to contribute no matter our age. Conclusion. My dear young ones, as I come to the end of this journey of sharing my experiences, I want to leave you with these final lessons. True wealth is in experiences and relationships, not possessions. Happiness can be found in the simplest things of everyday life. Gratitude is a powerful path to peace and contentment. It's never too late to find a purpose and make a difference. Life is precious in all its phases. Cherish every moment. Remember, life is not about accumulating things, but about accumulating moments. It's about the lives we touch, the love we share, and the difference we make. Live simply, love generously, seek peace, be grateful, and never stop growing and learning. Life is a wonderful gift. Live it fully, with all your heart. And so, my dear ones, I close this conversation with you. I carry with me the hope that these words, born from a long life full of experiences, may illuminate your paths and enrich your journeys. May you find joy in simple things, peace in gratitude, and purpose in all phases of life. This is true wealth, true success. With all my love and accumulated wisdom, your old friend.